I want to welcome Rana June today to Google New York. Rana is known as the iPad DJ, but we invited her here today because her story is so much deeper than that. She started off as a developer, and through good decisions and risks, she's kind of evolved into her current role as iPad DJ. She played TED a few nights ago, so we just thought it was a great match to get out the geek crowd and have her come down and talk at Google. So without further ado, Rana June.
Thank you. It's such a pleasure to be here talking to you guys because lately I play a lot of shows where it's like in a nightclub or whatever, but really my roots are more on the analytics and engineering side. And so I just want to tell you a little bit about who I am and I guess why I'm the iPad DJ and maybe a professional DJ isn't. So I grew up in Virginia, and Steve Case was my neighbor. So I've been using kind of this new generation of web, if you will, for my whole life. And my school, elementary school, actually beta tested AIM. I mean, it was like really cool to see how that whole community now, the DC area, has really created a lot of the products that we use nowadays. But you know, I thought that I wanted to go into politics, and I went down that path. And I actually worked doing political lobbying and grassroots stuff for a couple years, and I realized very quickly that's not for me. But that if you could take those same principles of getting communities together and communications and really just gathering people who are like-minded together, that if you applied that to business, you could call that communications. And suddenly now people aren't so mad at you. And so I decided to kind of shift roles a little bit. And so I started a couple companies, and I realized that there was this amazing opportunity to help entrepreneurs in the DC area learn how to take their products to market, because all the AOL layoffs were happening, and so there were all these really brilliant engineers running around with like $50,000 in severance, and they all had ideas for startups, and this was in the early 2000s, and so people, you know, they just didn't know how to take those ideas and help other people understand what they were building. And I started this company, and I got like 5 clients in 3 weeks or something like that, and a few weeks later, I basically got acquired. And so that was a really short-lived endeavor for me. But I got, it was like a talent acquisition kind of thing with a venture fund in New York, in DC, I mean. And so what happened was I was forced to think about all these different verticals. I was thrust into learning how to take all those messages to market, and it was 13 different companies operated under a Keiretsu model. So each company within our fund was basically there to help support the other companies. And I mean, I'm sitting here like, oh my God, I know nothing about telecom, I know nothing about infrastructure, I know nothing about any of these things, but I had to learn. So a few years later, fast forward to 2007, and the iPhone comes out. And I am geeking out beyond belief, because I was like, this is a huge paradigm shift, and I was, you know, really excited about it. And none of my colleagues were really sharing that enthusiasm, except for one of my partners. And we were both we had jailbroken our phones, and we started realizing that there was this whole developer community forming, and that there was a, you know, great opportunity to build a company around what was happening there. So it was kind of just like an idea or whatever. But then on June 1st, 2008, we actually created the company. We decided to leave the fund and start this business. And 41 days later, we'd actually built the product. And so on day 1 of the App Store's launch, we had a product in the market. And so I have data from day 1 about application usage, patterns, behaviors, all that stuff. And again, you know, coming from an analytic background, and that's kind of the way my brain works, I started to really understand how people were going to start incorporating these devices into their daily lives. And this is the first generation, or at that point, it was the 3G, but you know, the second version of the phone. So it was very early on. So fast forward now, 1,000 days later, you know, we have 10 billion application downloads. So it's amazing to see how quickly this has all changed. But that book that's on your chairs right now, I decided last year to write a book about the first 500 days of the App Store and kind of look back and see what had happened prior to that in terms of other people's attempts to reach, you know, the mobile consumer, and sort of where those things had fallen short, and then also what Apple had done well, and tell stories of different developers and former Apple employees and all of that. So I don't know if any of you guys know about what the process for writing a book is, but you submit it, like you work really hard, and then you submit it. and then you have to basically sit around and wait. And that's really boring. So my background as a musician is actually, it's not that new. I started playing music when I was 6, and I played piano, violin, viola was my main instrument, and I was pretty good at viola, and I picked up guitar at age 15, and I also learned about computer recording at 15, around the same time that I started to get into electronic music. So it was a really amazing point of intersection there. And so here I was, I was in college, and I was pretending to listen to lectures, but really I was making beats on my MacBook, or PowerBook at the time. And so, when I built my career in business, I'd always had a studio in my house, but it just never had an opportunity to become something that I actually pursued. And so, I turned the book in and I thought, well, I have a few months now where I don't really have much going on. So why don't I just go to Guitar Center and just buy a bunch of gear and just kind of get myself back up to speed with what's going on in this space. And so I went and I spent like $4,000 buying MIDI controllers and Ableton, Logic, got all the tools, all the plugins, and I sat down at my computer and I was like, what am I gonna do with all this stuff? It was really overwhelming just because you have so many possibilities and it can be a little bit cumbersome. So that was a really interesting time because I had those little experiments a week before the launch of the iPad. So I was already kind of thinking about music and how to take these new paradigms and incorporate them. And I was looking at things like the Lemur, which is a touchscreen controller. And there were some really amazing things happening with iPhones controlling laptops. And so when I was sitting in line, I live close by. I went to the Meatpacking District Apple Store at 2 o'clock in the morning because why not? So I'm sitting there, there's nobody else in line, and I guess something just clicked, and I realized, oh my God, I confuse what I know about mobile and I confuse what I know about music, and maybe there's something that I can do in the middle of those two passions of mine. So I raced home, and the reason that I have 2 iPads is actually also a funny story. I had pre-ordered my iPad, and all of my friends on Twitter were, they're like, Steve Wozniak's in line with us, and like, everything's awesome, everyone's in line, and I thought, damn it, I'm missing out, I gotta go. So I actually leapt out of bed and went to sit in line. So now I had 2 iPads, right? So I get home, and I start kind of messing around with them, and I discovered that there were some really incredible instruments that had been built that were specifically around the notion of using a touch interface. And the problem that I faced at the time was that I was using beta software or maybe even alpha software. All these apps had not been tested on the actual device yet because the developers at the time didn't have the access to the iPad to test on. So I had the buggiest, worst experience, and that's why I incorporated the DJ mixer. It wasn't originally my intention. I actually just wanted to have 2 tablets, and then I realized that this was actually a real hindrance to my ability to perform. So this is the genesis of this setup, and to give you a little bit of color into what's happened since then, I made a video and put it up on YouTube and got almost 1 million views in 2 weeks. So suddenly, this girl who's like a data geek is now the face of touchscreen mobile music making, and I had to, again, learn very quickly how to incorporate all of my background and then also keep pushing the boundaries of what's possible with just 2 touchscreen interfaces and no computer, as you can see. I'm not, this is the processing power that I have. So these are my kids, Alpha and Beta. And I hope with iPad 2 I don't have the same problems, but I've basically figured out a way to hack a version of Ableton Live, which is really popular. It's called a DAW, but in music, it's like an interface for a lot of DJs use it for live performance. And so what I've done is I've created, like this set that I'm gonna play for you probably took me about 30 hours to make. It's not an easy process. When I play shows that are 3 hours long, it takes me weeks and months to make the sets because everything is done by hand, and it's frustrating, but I think at this point I've played 90 shows since last April for over 100,000 people. And every day I learn something new. And again, coming back to the beginning of the talk, I mean, I'm so excited to sit with you guys because I really feel like everyone in this room can help me think about what the future of this is. Because I think about this in the context of, yeah, it's great, I'm making music on an iPad, but what does it really mean? Well, when I was a child, playing music was my favorite part of the day. And my niece is 12, and she doesn't have a music program in her school. So what if with a tablet, a child can learn a chord progression on a piano, or they can learn rhythm, or they can learn music theory? So, if you can take this out beyond just the fact that I'm an iPad DJ, which I didn't even name myself that. I was actually given that name, so it's stuck. But I really think it's bigger than just playing dance music. So I'm gonna play a short set for you guys, and then afterwards, feel free to ask me questions, and it's just really a pleasure to be here. Thank you.
In about, I don't know, 5 or 6 minutes into the set, if anyone wants to just queue up over here, and we can kind of walk people up here a little bit and escort them off and get another group for anyone who wants to get a closer look.
Steps tonight, following the power lines, at our man bus side, with eclipses for eyes, and you tell yourself you won't let them touch. Did I say too much? Did I say enough? I don't know. Sylvia, I don't know. Sylvia. Steps tonight, all the insincere. So I'm gonna give all my secrets away. This time, don't need another perfect line. Don't care if critics ever jump in line. I'm gonna give all my secrets away. My God, amazing how we got this far. It's like we're chasing all those stars whose drivers shiny big black cars. And every day I see the news, all the problems that we could solve. And when a situation rises, just write it into an album, send it straight to gold. But I don't really like my flow, no. So tell me what you want to hear, something that'll light those ears. I'm sick of all the insincere, so I'm gonna give all my secrets away. This time, don't need another perfect line. Don't care if critics ever jump in line. I'm gonna give all my secrets away. Tell me what you want to hear. 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 Tell me what you want. Tell me what you. Tell me what you want. Tell me what you want to hear. I'm gonna give all my secrets away.
What's the worst thing that could happen to you? Take a chance tonight and try something new. You're getting boring, you're all so boring, and I don't recognize the zombie you turn into. Don't worry, 'cause tonight I got you. You can take a seat, do what you normally do. I'm about to let you see. This is what'll happen if you ain't giving your girl what she
Awesome. So before I forget, I definitely want to thank the great Google Sound crew for helping put all this together. thanks to Kate Clugston for helping put all this together as well. So I don't know if you want to talk a little bit more or take some questions.
Sure.
Definitely have time for some questions.
Awesome. Well, again, I mean, you know, I'll be the first to say this isn't perfect. It has problems, but it's entertaining as hell. So I think that's one of the things that's really important to me as a musician, and kind of I'm veering more into the artist realm now than in the analytics space just nowadays. And one thing that is really important to me is when I see my favorite electronic musicians, I'm like, dude, are you checking your email right now, or are you playing music? You know, because I can't really tell. And I think this really injects a lot of creativity and an audio and visual connection with an audience. So I'm sure you guys can imagine, like when I play for 5,000 or 6,000 people, it's crazy, you know, because I can like bring people up on stage and I can swing the iPads around. You've never seen a DJ pick up a turntable, you know? And so this is definitely, it's forcing people to think about electronic music in a different way, because one of the things that makes electronics so interesting for composers is that you have unlimited processing power, right? Like the human mind can't do as much as a computer can, but what you lose is that now you have a machine, right? But if you have an organic touch manipulating sound that's processed by a computer, that's super exciting, you know, especially for someone like me. And so I really hope this is the beginning, and it hasn't even been a year that I've been doing this. So, you know, I hope when I come back and play for you guys this time next year, you know, it'll be like crazy. We'll have infrared and we'll have like all this crazy stuff. So, you know, I really welcome, if you guys have questions, please, like I would love to talk to you guys. Come, there's a mic.
Do you sell your loops?
Oh, that's a great question. So, okay, well, you know, I'm in the company of friends, right? So here's what's happened to me. I started doing this and everyone's like, WTF, and then they were like, no, that's actually really cool. So I have just been commissioned for my first 2 remixes, and so I'm really kind of demonstrating what I'm doing as a producer now a lot more than ever, and that's really what I am. I'm a producer, and DJ is not the right word, but people, when you say iPad DJ to anyone like walking around in Times Square, they can understand what I'm doing. And so it's really, like from a marketing standpoint or whatever, it gets me in the door a lot easier than if I was like, I'm a producer who uses touch computer, I don't know, like it doesn't make a lot of sense. Like my mom understands what an iPad DJ might be. So I think as I start to do a lot more production work and people know what my sound is, I have a really distinct sound, then I will probably make my own app. Because one of the things that's been really tough for me, and that's why it's a great question, when I started doing this, I made a decision on day one that I wasn't, even though I could just, you know, fire up Xcode and write something, it's like, I didn't want anyone to say that I was using the iPad because I was trying to sell something. I really do believe in this platform. I really do believe in what this means. And so I wanted to just remove that level of doubt. And so I only use apps that are available in the App Store. When I make my loops, when I do everything, everything's only done on the iPads, and it's all done with readily available software, nothing proprietary. However, as you guys can see, it's kind of clunky for me. I'm making this fit my workflow and not the other way around. And that's not ideal when you're a professional entertainer or whatever, and you're like, oh my God, is my thing gonna crash, you know? So I just, now that so much time has gone by, I think it might be time for me to start doing that. And then of course it will come preloaded with loops, and kind of, I'll probably do like tutorials about how I've figured out how to make this work, you know? But that's the beauty of it, right? Like if I hand this iPad to you with my set, you'll probably figure out a different way to perform it than I do, and that's what's so beautiful about it, you know, because it's so personal. But I mean, I'm kind of in this strange position, you know, because people are like, they find it hard to believe that I could be the girl on the cover of that book, but then also the girl with red hair, you know? I mean, but I think you guys probably get that better than anybody. I mean, you can be creative and be technical at the same time, and it actually makes both sides better, you know? Does that answer your question? Sorry, long answer.
So it's somewhat far-fetched follow-up. Electronic music in the 70s and 80s, especially in Europe,
Yeah.
musicians built a lot of their own instruments because they didn't exist and they didn't do what they want. And
Yeah.
What do you think is missing from the platform to enable people to do that?
Knobs. Seriously. I was praying. I was watching the announcement for iPad 2, and I was like, please be a USB port. Because if I could have some element of hardware control, like this mixer is, you guys see, I don't touch it, you know? It's just here as a redundancy. But I mean, I'm a big fan of circuit bending, you know? Like I've been messing with speak and spell since I was a teenager, you know? Like that's so fun. And I mean, that's the thing, you know? I listen to Autechre, I listen to Kraftwerk. I love what those guys do, you know? That is so unique and different. And I think the challenge here is that you have Apple's sandbox, right? And so like, if you look in the SDK, you'll see there are certain things that you should technically be able to do, but you will get rejected if you try and do that. And you know, I was saying like 7 or 8 months ago that there was definitely gonna be GarageBand on the iPad because it doesn't make sense for them not to do it considering what they were withholding from developers, you know? But what I thought was very surprising is that like there are certain hardware developers and manufacturers that have created these amazing controllers where you can put like an iPhone inside a keyboard or an iPad inside a keyboard. And now the iPad or the iPhone serves as the brain and it's just triggering MIDI or whatever. And that's great. It's like moving in the right direction. So when I can have a 49 key workstation and it saves everything to my GarageBand session and I've got 8 tracks going and you know, then I can connect that or sync it, you know, with my Logic instance at home and compose something on a plane and finish it at home in the studio. That's really cool, you know? We're just not there yet. And so for me, it's kind of like, oh my God, I have 5 billion answers to that question because it's, I mean, the most frustrating thing about this to me is that I know if I'm at home on my tricked out MacBook Pro, the thing that I'm trying to do that's taking me 6 hours, literally 6 hours, would take me like 3.5 minutes to do. So those kinds of frustrations, I think it's why you're not seeing a lot of iPad DJs out there, because it's really a frustrating experience to just do the most rudimentary things. And, but like I said, it's a labor of love, you know, because I really do think once everything catches up with what you can do on a laptop, this will be so much more valuable than that experience will be.
So to follow that up, we might have some Android developers here interested in what's missing from
Show
the iPad.
yourselves.
But outside of that, as a follow-up question to when you were talking earlier about your workflow, getting to watch how you work, it seems like there's almost no real need for the DJ mixer. You don't use the DJ mixer. You just use it to sum the two outputs more than anything?
Yeah.
Okay, because everything's happening on the iPads. You don't use the DJ mixer as a DJ mixer at all.
Exactly. However, it's one of those things where it's like life insurance. You know, you keep paying every month and you're like, why am I paying for this? Health insurance, better example. You know, that's how I feel about it because like I did my thing at TED and oh my God, what just happened? You know, like my effects aren't working. I'm touching the Chaos Pad and it's not doing anything and I'm messing up all my transitions and the audience doesn't know. I know. So I had to literally be like, I'm gonna reboot this now. Let me make it look like I'm doing something. But that's really sucky. So, you know, I like to, when I do the more high pressure shows, I'll just put this sounds crazy, but I think you guys will understand like why I do this. I'll have an iPhone or something, or like an iPod Touch, and I'll just randomly play music at 128 beats per minute, on a loop, whatever. And I don't even care what it is. But in the event that I might need, if everything just dies, like, and I just need something to be playing, I try to do that when I know that there's the potential for that kind of catastrophic failure, you know? But it's things like that. I mean, my problems are so different than other people's problems, you know? Like, I'll tell you guys an anecdote that sucked so bad. I played a huge show for a big client of mine, and it was like their holiday party, right? So it was all of their advertising clients were there, and they had blown it out. It was in LA at this huge venue, and I'd had a really lovely day. I'd like gotten a massage that day, and I was just chilling in LA, you know, and the 70-degree weather got to me in December. And I get to my sound check like super late. I normally do my sound check early in the day, just in case. And so I get there, and I checked everything else. I checked the power, I checked the cables. I didn't turn my iPads on until like maybe 15 minutes before the show started. So I go and load my Looptastic. The provisioning license expired. I'm like, oh my God. So here I am, I'm like in Xcode trying to like fix it. I'm calling the developer who's 3 hours in different time, time zone than me. It's like 10 minutes, 5 minutes before the show. I'm like, dude, you gotta fix this. I'm freaking out, and it got resolved like a minute before the doors open. But I mean, these kinds of frustrations, you just don't anticipate, and that's the problem. Like, if you could read a book about like what touring musicians experience, none of my challenges are in there. So it's, I've learned a lot. It's really tested me. The fact that I'm still doing it is insane, to be honest. But that's kind of, it's comfortable and familiar, and that's the only thing that I have control over right now, is that I can get this mixer everywhere I go. And so, it just helps me understand what I'm doing, That's the other thing too, because these are, I practice like 5 hours a day, total. Not just physically performing, but like making stuff, or like I treat it like an instrument, right? So I'm constantly importing new songs or whatever and doing all this stuff with it. And like I have 6 iPads right now that are all kind of synced. It's like, okay, so there's a lot of movement there. The reason that I use the DJM or whatever, a 5-channel mixer, is that like when I do shows that are longer than an hour, I need to have 4 iPads. And I was explaining earlier, like when I do 3-hour shows, sometimes I'll have like all 6 plugged in, ready to go, and then just helps.
All right, a couple of questions. Well, actually, one question, a couple of comments. First of all, I sort of feel like it's not really truly mobile unless you don't have wires attached to your gadgets. So have you considered Bluetooth audio for your setup?
Bluetooth synced right now, which was already for me like a huge gamble. Mm-hmm. I've tried, that was the thing, I'm with you. Like, I mean, I can roll into my gig with these in my purse, Like that's how mobile it is on that end. Mm-hmm. But I do have to deal with this. So I think it's one of those things where at first, what I tried to do was get a 3rd iPad there's an app that's a really gorgeous control surface. I tried doing it sucks. Mm-hmm. It's not there yet, Okay. Maybe iPad 2 will solve some of those audio problems. But for me, I couldn't get it. There was so much latency involved when I was doing things with Bluetooth or using wireless of any kind. With this, this is so blasphemous anyways, guys. Sometimes some of my shows, I don't know, any audio geeks in here, really the DJ gods are like frowning on me so much because I have an 1/8-inch cable to an XLR. It's so wrong. It's so wrong. And that's kind of the other thing is, it's not like this is good audio signal, but at least it's reliable, Mm-hmm. So if you know of any way that I can make that work without wires, I'd be totally down.
Actually, I figured you would say that, so I don't have a good answer for that anyway, we can't resist a shameless plug here.
Yeah.
So I recently sorted up a little MIDI Bluetooth interface, so that may be a way to get your knobs to talk to your gadgets.
That's such a problem for me because you guys see sometimes I'll miss something. I'll have to literally loop back 16 bars because I couldn't move my fingers fast enough. Or this has 16 inputs for multi-touch. Mm-hmm. Doesn't mean it actually works for 16. I don't have 16 fingers anyways, but it's like, if I do 4 or 5 things at a time, things get screwed up. So having a physical controller would be awesome.
Well, you may have hugged me too soon though, because so it works with Android. So unfortunately, Steve Jobs will not let you access the API that you need to.
Do you know what? Look, I'll say this no matter where I am. If I could do this on whatever, I would do it. It just so happens that right now this is what's working. I'm really open to ideas here, because that's the thing. I'm getting to the point where I'm starting to get a little stuck, because there's certain things that I just can't do. And so, that's the thing, I'm really, really open. Maybe I'll incorporate 1 Android tablet, and I'll have 3. Or maybe, I'm sure that there's things that I can do. It's just a matter of getting that to work, Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.